Well, welcome to our Thursday evening Zoom. This is John Sarber. I'm on the board of the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. And I'd like to thank our sponsors first, the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, which is, and Homeland Solar, McNaught and McKay, Iron Ridge Racking, Harvest Solar, and Shree Energy. And, I know many of you are members of GLREA. We appreciate your support. If you're not a member, we'd love to have you join the family. And you can do that at our website, glrea.org, glrea.org. And it's my pleasure to introduce Geoff Jacquez. He's the president of BioMedware and is an adjunct associate professor of environmental health sciences at the University of Michigan. Geoff earned his bachelor's degree in biology and his master's degree in resource policy and economics and law from the University of Michigan. And then he got a PhD in ecology and environmental and evolutionary biology from SUNY at Stony Brook. Since 1990, he has been president of BioMedware, and that's a company that provides solutions in the area of geohealth, where geography, health, and the environment intersect. Tonight, he's going to tell us his kind of journey to get to negative carbon footprint, which includes the solar system, batteries, and geothermal, and other energy actions. And so with that, let me turn it over to Geoff. Thanks for coming, Geoff.
Thank you, John. If I can get the screen sharing working. And okay, is that
looking working? Good?
Looking good. All right, good deal. I want to talk a little bit tonight about just a very personal story as I became interested in becoming green, you might call it. Wanted to get on that side of the problem where I'm not part of the problem. Already had an introduction here. Rather, want to be part of the solution. That's what I'll be talking about today. So I'd like to cover my motivation in terms of why I got into this. Something that has been called the 4 C's is just a basic rubric for understanding the problem itself. Circles of influence. This is where I began to think about how I can fit in and become part of the solution. Then I put together some steps toward carbon negative, and these are ones that work for me. So, of course, that voyage won't be the same for anyone else, but it's just something that worked for me. And I'll talk very briefly about my journey and some of the steps and where I am now. And then we'll have a question and answer. So here we go. Get into the motivation component. Of course, I have a strong background in environmental health sciences, so I'm very much aware of how the environment impacts health. And with my training at University of Michigan, began to understand some of the background and underpinnings of policy and law and how these interact with science itself. So when I started seeing graphs like this is a recent one, and you see here, you can see my, I'm not sure. You see those little gray lines. Each of those is a signature for a year of average global sea surface temperature through time, January through December. You see on the bottom axis. And we've highlighted here 2016, 2023, and where we are this year, up to February 3rd, 2024. And as you can see, daily sea surface temperatures through time increasing dramatically. And for those of you who are aware about the ability of the Earth to absorb temperature from global warming, one of the big reservoirs has been the oceans. That water capacity to absorb heat is enormous, but we're overwhelming it. So you can find lots of graphics like this. They're everywhere. I'm sure you've seen others. So when I think about that kind of issue, I begin to think, of course, well, what can I do? And the first thing to consider, of course, is what are some of the important causes? And I learned of this rubric, the 4 Cs: coal, cars, concrete, and cows. And as you can see here in this graph, on the x-axis is time, 1990 up to 2020. And on the y-axis, we have billions of tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. So these are greenhouse gases broken down by sector. And as you can see, use of fossil fuels, coal primarily, but also heating oils, things like that, to generate electricity and to heat homes is way up there, right there. It's going up and it's way high here. That's that red one at the top. Next one is cars, and this is the transport sector. And it's also a big one. As you can see, it's been going up. It's taken a nice dip down recently. We'll talk about that in a moment. We have concrete, which is manufacturing and construction, and then cows, which is the rubric for agriculture. And this is primarily think of it as sort of the industrial agriculture production, heavy on herbicides, heavy on pesticides, heavy on lots of trips back and forth across fields and things like that. So those 4 rubrics, those 4 Cs are something I think about when I'm trying to deal with, well, what can I do? It's very easy, especially when I talk to a lot of people who are just learning about these issues. Well, I can't do anything, right? These are outside my scope. We need the government to come in and set things right. And certainly it's a problem that is completely cross-cutting across policymakers, of course. National action is needed, state action is needed. But remember from the 70s that when there's a problem, you think globally, act locally. Remember that? So I started thinking, okay, well, what can I do? And this circles of influence gave me some guidance. First, we have a circle of concern. I mean, that's global warming, and it's an existential threat for our planet. Then we have circle of influence. These are people I know, where I can talk to, things I can do, like give a webinar like this, right? So reach out and do something. And then in that black circle in the middle, that circle of control. And that's what we're talking about tonight. These are steps that I can take. This is something I can do, make it concrete. And I thought that there are at least 5 steps that worked for me. And in many ways, you think about behavioral change, it's both the easiest and it's the hardest, because changing how we do things is really, really difficult. If you've ever had a bad habit you wanted to break, you know what I'm talking about. So in terms of behavioral changes, and again, trying to fit this into the 4 Cs, well, try to eat less meat that is produced by industrial agriculture. You don't have to not eat meat, but do it locally. You know, go. There are farmers around here, certainly, who are raising their beef out on pastures, things like that. I like to hunt, I like to fish, so I get some meat and fish that way. I have a vegetable garden that I put in a couple, 3 years ago, and it provides a lot of my food. Consolidate trips. Instead of taking 2 trips in a week, take 1. You know, that does a big way of addressing the cars, see, and turn that thermostat down. That's something else. You have under your control. And in the summer, turn it up. You're using air conditioning. So again, that's just immediate steps that are easy to take, behavioral changes. Next for me was home energy efficiency. When I first started talking to people in the industries, gee, should I put in solar panels? Should I go with geothermal? They said, no, you know what you need to do? Insulate your home, make it more efficient. So that was the first step for me, insulate. You can undertake an energy audit as well. So actually have thermal imaging taken of your home from the exterior and see where you're losing heat. That's another one. Switch to LEDs, light emitting diodes in the home, instead of incandescent bulbs. You can switch to more efficient appliances as the old ones wear out. And I switched over to induction cooktops because I love to cook. So, and I was burning gas to do it, propane. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing this, I might as well use an induction cooktop. And I was hooked. They're wonderful. They're faster and more controllable, actually, than gas. So that was a big surprise. And a lot of these things here in energy efficiency, of course, the electric companies will help you do that. And there's also support in terms of tax abatements and so on. I do a lot of work around the property. And I just started switching to battery-powered tools. So, and these are drills, saws, circular saws, that kind of tool. The big one for me was getting an electric chainsaw. That was just fantastic. So much easier to work with. I then bought an electric lawnmower when my old one died. So especially as these internal combustion engine tools just start to wear out, just go electric. Replace with battery tools. Wonderful. It changed how I work. And then I began focusing on some of the bigger changes, making the home, we call it a net energy generator. I had been burning propane to heat the home, and that was a lot of money, depending. It's also uncertain in terms of what the pricing will be. And so I put in a geothermal system. It completely destroyed my yard and put in new plenum, all sorts of stuff like that. And you have the geothermal, the heat pump that's involved. But for me, it turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful change. And it was not that expensive because I had an air conditioner that was dying, would have been $6,000 to replace. And I got a 30% tax rebate or abatement, whatever the heck it is. Then I went with solar panels, which was wonderful, and realized, oh, I need to be able to store it. So I put in 2 Tesla Powerwalls. And now, somehow after those changes, I'm a net power generator. I don't buy propane anymore. I don't use gas. I haven't filled up that tank in almost 4 years now. And I'm selling electricity to the grid, which is fantastic. And then I have a excess that takes me through the winter, actually. So I don't buy any power from the grid anymore with the credits I generate over the summer. And finally, my latest step has been in the transportation area. I learned of Chevy Bolts and what a great deal they are. You might recall these are the ones that were catching on fire. They're having problems with the batteries. So they stopped producing them as well. And I found some bolts that were coming off lease from California. They have them up at Shea's still, which is a seller of cars. And man, it's wonderful. I go by the 20-20 rule, which is I'm not going to spend more than 20,000 on a vehicle, and it has to have fewer than 20,000 miles, which means that not many vehicles qualify there, but the Bolt sure did, and I love it. So fantastic. Kept the pickup truck, took the insurance off. It's very cheap. All I drive now is the Bolt. It's delightful. So then suddenly my life changed. You can see there's the geothermal on the right, that hydron system, power walls down in the basement. Now I have batteries all over the place. You can see those green things are interchangeable among some of the tools I have. Those are from the lawnmower. And I have my wonderful grid mounted solar array in the back there, the bolt on the right, an e-bike, an Ego electric zero-turn lawnmower. I have an electric utility vehicle on the left for getting around the property. I have quite a few of the power supplies that I can then take around the property in my electric utility vehicle, just in those instances where I have to power a tool that has a cord on it. So it's really changed how I work. And I don't handle gas, fuel, oil, done with that. It's great. So something happened here, saved money, actually, which was a big surprise. No more propane. I don't go to gas stations anymore. I don't have utility bills anymore, except for transmission fees, which are annoying. Changed how I work. It's faster, more convenient. I mentioned already, no fuel smells. The chainsaw runs every time. You just pull that trigger and it goes whoop. It's fantastic and it's quiet. I really like being grid independent in the sense that yeah, I have to have the backup, but when that power goes down and the power wall kicks in, I don't even notice. Great. And as I'm getting ready for retirement now, my monthly payments for utilities, things like that, are down to almost zero. So it really helps with the monthly budget, which is kind of cool. Okay, so what's next? Well, I'm not finished doing this by any means because I'm fortunate enough to live on 50 acres with two brothers. And we're doing things like installing tall grass prairie. And one of the reasons we're doing that is for diversity, habitat. This had been here, you're looking at that prairie, had been all what's called a cold season grass, brome grass, which is a biological desert. When you put in the prairie, you can see here with my dog Lucy just how diverse it is. Turns out also, though, the prairies are net carbon sinks because so much of the prairie is actually underground. Those roots go down 20, 25, 30 feet. So trying to change habitat that I have available to become carbon sinks, which is cool. And now I'm just so taken with electricity and the green lifestyle. I'm looking at purchasing an aircraft that's electric powered, an experimental aircraft, which should be great fun. I think they can fly now for up to 40 minutes, if you can believe that, on battery power. Pretty cool. And with that, John, I guess I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. That was very interesting. Yeah, why don't you stop the screen sharing? And it looks like Dave has the first question. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, backing up to where the panels were in the back and the bolt was on the right
Yeah.
and that screen, how long did it take to get to that point? I
Oh, with all that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, that voyage took me, let's see, we moved out here 2015. We started getting in here. So you're looking at 5-6 years, something like that. And it wasn't really was a plan. I just gave the talk like there was a plan, but it was more just learning about things as I was going ahead. So we put in one of the big improvements, geothermal, and then a couple of years later, just the solar array. Then the next year, the Tesla power walls. So it's been a very incremental thing. And one of the things that happened is I became kind of hooked on the tax refunds or rebates, whatever they call it. I wanted that 30% to help me out with my taxes every year. So I think you're looking at easily 5 years or so.
Okay, I was curious just because I'm in similar situation. It would seem as though I don't have the uh, resources to be able to make that all happen. But
Right.
uh, I appreciate the knowledge you're giving us, though. Thank you.
Oh, certainly. And I think it's really important. That's a great point, is the do it in phases. You don't have to do it all at once by any means. So, because geothermal is a big investment. Um, Putting in that solar array was a big investment, and I didn't do it all in the same go. Just
Yes, Steve
kind of
asks,
evolved.
what was your total investment in all these actions, and what was your approximate return on investment?
Oh yeah. Well, I wish I can just give you ballparks on this.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I'm thinking total investment, including the car, going to be around 60,000 some odd dollars. But that does not include then the 30% back on a lot of this stuff. And also when you factor in the fact that a lot of the infrastructure, like the air conditioner, had to be replaced anyway. They gave me estimates of 6,000 just to replace that air conditioning unit, which ran constantly in the summer. And
Geothermal systems can be quite expensive. How much approximately was your geothermal system?
I'm remembering around 20,000.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and I helped with some of the clearing because I ran it into a little bit of a woodlot we have here. So I spent about a week out there with the track hoe, ripping out trees and stumps and things like that. So I helped out some.
Am I right in assuming with the geothermal that it was more horizontal as opposed to vertical because
Correct. Yeah.
okay, because
Yeah.
you
So
had the space, so
we
it
had the
probably was more
space.
economical to do the horizontal rather than
Yeah.
the vertical, which
Yeah.
helped with I'm sure that helped with the cost.
Yeah. So because they didn't have to trench down that much. As I recall, those trenches were only like 5 to 6 feet deep. So it
Now,
was
one
not
thing
that.
I hadn't seen mentioned before, and I really appreciated was retirement ready. Because it's a good concept, I think, for a lot of what you did, that you were kind of making investments so that your operating costs would be reduced.
Right.
And I think that whole concept for people who are getting close to retirement would be attractive. But I hadn't
Yeah.
heard anybody kind of mention that before as a factor, which I think I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Well, when you think about, um, you talk to your financial advisor, and some of them will say, "Oh no, you want to put that money into the market, right? Because you get depending on your advisor, 6 to 8% return annually on average." Well, it's that on average that's really the trip for us as we're getting older, because as we know, there's the ups and the downs. So if you can just cut your expense side, that is secure, right? It's that expense is not coming back. It's not, oh, like, gee, my my portfolio dropped 20%. Well, those expenses are still gone. That's great. So for me, that was attractive.
Yeah, it's interesting because the investments you've made are really very conservative and secure investments because of
Right.
the nature of the technology and what you just mentioned. If you're really smart at the stock market, maybe you can do well, but we're not all real smart about that. But let me ask you too: is there anything you would do differently, looking back on it now?
Um, I think I'd start doing it earlier. It's like whenever you find something that really works and it's good, you can think, oh, geez, I kind of wish I'd done this earlier. But that's a good sign, actually. It means it worked, you know.
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
I'm curious as to how the utilities reacted to what you were doing. Were they helpful or hindering you?
Um, Fortunately, I worked with the Harvest Solar, and Jake Schuster and his group dealt almost entirely with the utilities, and that was a big one, was the electric utilities and making sure we got past the requirements they had. I don't fully understand them, and I'm glad I don't, because because those guys just took care of it. Jake did, and his team. But what happened is a funny thing happened on the way to installing this stuff. My understanding, the utilities kind of cap how much you can install in terms of capacity. But with a lot of these other steps I've put in place, what's happened is my load, my demand over the year has dropped. So now I actually generate more power than I use, which is pretty darn nifty. And I like that a lot. So, and the same thing with the geothermal, there was not much that was needed from the utilities, because the gas that was replaced for heating was all propane. So all that changed there is I quit filling up my propane tank, which is also a nice thing, because in past years we paid over $6,000 a year in propane costs. That's a lot of money.
And the prices of propane, right, can be pretty volatile too, right? They kind of
Yeah, they sure can.
they can go up and down, and that's another thing too. Kind of Melanie asked the question, why are you still connected to the grid?
Oh, well, when we started off, I hadn't put in the power walls, so needed to be grid tied. So that's the way it evolved. And of course, in the winter, I still use power from the grid. I don't have battery storage. When we get these Michigan Februaries, Januaries, the sun doesn't shine very much. But I don't need it because I get credits with the utility company that I can then use to offset power bills when I do use it during the year. And I still pay some money every month. Let's see, during the summer, it's $10 and change to be connected, and for the right to use, I guess, their grid components. And even though in the winter months, sometimes I'll use, of course, I'm using power. The cost of the power itself is completely offset by my credits. However, they still charge me for the transmission. Okay.
Yeah. Charles, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, just curious, what role did energy efficient measures that you, besides switching over LED lights, but in terms of insulation or any other measures you made I said turn on your thermostat, but is there anything in terms of insulation or anything else you did that you say just on the energy efficiency side, so on the demand side in your house?
Well, let's see. I should have done more. Actually, that's one of the things I really think I could have done differently, and I still should do, is replace some of my insulation around my doors, things like that. The house was built finished in 1999. My father built it, and or rather paid for it, and the builder did a really good job of insulating it. So we didn't have to do too much retrofitting there at all, which was good. What else have we done in terms of insulation? Doors, upgrading glass, things like that. That helps.
Thank
But
you.
I was fortunate, and there wasn't that much. Also, if you've ever found there are gaps and things that need a little bit of filling, that foam stuff you get, that spray and foam, is really great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Jeffrey, you live in Ann Arbor, correct?
No, I don't. I'm out in Jerome.
Where's Jerome?
Jerome is south of Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is actually Hillsdale County.
So in your neck of the woods, do a lot of people use propane for heating in the winter?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
the reason why I mentioned this is that there was an explosion in Ann Arbor this last week.
I
And-
saw that.
And it turns out looks as though it's propane heating,
Yep.
which I didn't realize could be obviously potentially very dangerous. So that's it. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thanks, John.
And Jeff, your utility is Consumers Energy or a rural co-op?
I'm sorry?
Your utility, is it Consumers Energy?
It's consumers.
Yeah, okay. Other comments or questions from folks? Go ahead, Steve.
I commend you for all of your efforts, but we'll ask, what are your thoughts on scaling this to the mass market? Because the reality is a lot of folks don't have 50 acres and maybe the capital to invest in the system. So any thoughts in kind of scaling it to those, maybe with a little less resources?
Oh, certainly. And that's a great question because we're all in different situations. Certainly we're living in different situations. You know, oh, it's wonderful I'm able to put in geothermal, have the resources, but also I'm not living in an apartment. I have my own home, you know, so it changes a lot of things that I can actually control. And that's why I go back to those 5 steps. We can all begin with behavioral change, you know, just things such as instead of going out and doing 2-3 trips a week, try to consolidate, things like that. So certainly are things we can do. And as you might notice too, when it comes to some of the innovations in the green arena, if I can even use or coin that term, for apartment dwellers, there now are solar panels that they can put on the outside of their terrace or whatever, and plug it into the wall. I don't know how the heck that works, but I've seen those, and there are always alternatives and things that can help. So yeah, I very much appreciate that I'm in a very good situation in terms of having property and resources.
Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, so in Hillsdale County, you've got a bunch of utility windmills. How's the neighborhood behaving when those were built?
There was a fair amount. I didn't notice that there were any people who were really against it, but I must admit I spend most of my time on my 50 acres and really enjoy it. I know we did have money that came in from that installation that helped with some of the damage that was done to the roads by the concrete trucks. That was significant. And you know, these are being installed primarily on big plots of farming ground. So, you know, out in the middle of cornfields and things like that. And the farmers themselves are getting a fair amount of compensation. I don't know how much, but I haven't really seen much against it. I didn't even see anything in the local papers as it was going on. And I thought there would have been more of a back and forth on it. They're just pretty silent. But again, that's from my experience. So.
Yeah, Jeff, you know, the question we have in the chat too has to do with how's your bolt doing in the winter? I know with my Tesla, I lose quite a bit of range as it gets colder. What has been your experience?
Well, I must admit, when I started, I was very much using this winter. I was very much aware of that, so I would just wear a lot of clothes in the bolt because I started watching. You know, it has this one. Your driving habits, and then just terrain. You have no control over terrain. Outside temperature, can't change that either. But the other one you can change is the indoor temperature in the car. So you can turn off the heat pump and just freeze. That didn't last very long for me. I said, yeah, okay, so it cuts the range some. But I just plan my trips so they're under 200 miles round trip.
Yeah, I noticed too that, and I knew this was true for gasoline engines too, that the speed that you drive has a lot to do with efficiency, and that's true for both gasoline cars and electric vehicles. So I noticed when I reduced my speed a little, it made a significant difference on the range, whether summer or winter. So that even makes you more conscious of the fact that better to go 70 rather than 80.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, well, with regard to range, it's the cube of the velocity that has an effect. So slowing down is always better. Being cold in a car, I'm very used to that. I used to drive a Corvair, air-cooled rear engine. Yeah, did not have a good heater.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you more about your geothermal, in particular, perhaps the square footage of your house, the number of tons of the system, and how large is the collection field?
Well, I cannot answer all of those because I'm not a techno, but I can tell you the square footage of the home is about 2,000 square feet. I don't know the tonnage of the system. Again, I rely very much on the people who come in and do the work and we review it, but I don't really remember the size of it. I have the field outside. Let's see, I think I've got a loop. Must be 150 feet, something like that, running out and then back. And I know that's not a very complete answer, but
That sounds like about the right size for geothermal for the size of your home. Thank you.
okay, thanks. And if you need more information, I can look and dig some of this stuff up and get it to you later.
Hey, Jeff, why did you go with the Tesla power walls as opposed to some other battery system? Was there some reason you went with the power walls?
Well, I have to test because guys at Harvest Solar said, yeah, we have these in.
Okay. So that's
Sure.
what
And
that's what they recommended, or that's what they had in stock, or
that's what they had stocked and recommended. And at the time, it's a few years ago now, at least I wasn't aware of some of the alternatives. There have been a lot of development in this area in terms of alternative products for storing energy in batteries. So I've been really happy with the Tesla Powerwalls. Have been performing just fine.
and you have two of them, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and was there an issue at all about getting one as opposed to two? I mean, was that a point of discussion with Harvest? Why did you end up getting, let's say, two rather than one?
Yeah, because they said, for what you're doing, two makes sense.
Okay,
So
and have you used the batteries during any power outages?
we used to get a lot of power outages here. And since I've put in the power walls, of course, I haven't really had that many outages. But when they do occur, I'm completely unaware unless I go and look at the app because the switch over is so fast, it's seamless. You don't notice that the power's gone out, for example.
Do you know then it sounds like it's taking care of all your loads that you don't even notice, so everything's
That's
still
right.
operating. Okay.
Yeah.
John, go ahead.
Just to continue this line of question regarding your batteries, did you have a discussion with Harvest, with Jake, about where to locate these batteries? I mean, were they in the garage or were they in the basement? We have a member that's had raised some questions with me about the safety of where to locate these batteries.
Yeah. We had a discussion as to where to put them. We have just a really nice spot in the basement, right by the panel, and it worked just fine. Not really aware of any safety concerns with the batteries themselves. I haven't heard much about them catching on fire or anything like that. So that seemed fine. And it's a controlled environment, so we don't have to worry about them getting wet or cold or any of those issues.
Thank you.
Jeff, do you know the size of the power walls are, what their capacity is? Any idea?
No, man.
Enough. They're big enough,
Jake
right?
is on here. I think Jake was on the call. I don't know if he's, but
Okay,
anyway.
I don't see him, but okay. That's just, hey, Lee, go ahead.
That's another one though that I can get back to you.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
so
Lee.
did you have a discussion about with your heat pump company to make sure that the capacity or the inrush on the heat pump did not exceed the output of the two batteries?
Oh, actually, that's one of the reasons why we put in the two power walls. Now that you remind me, that was one of the discussions we had because we had to have enough power to run the heat pump. So we put in the geothermal before we did the solar and before we did the battery installation. So that helped us with sizing all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. You've got your couple brothers kind of on the farm or whatever. Have you converted them into being energy?
I've been working on them.
Okay, how's that going?
They're one of them is very interested and says, "Oh yes, I'm going to do this." And the other one is, "No, I can't afford this." And what's interesting when I talk with other family members, what happens is it's often oh, but I have to do this first. I have to get the mortgage paid off first. I have to help my daughter buy a house first. All of these things. And for me, I think I said at the beginning with global heating being what I view as an existential threat, it's sort of like standing on a railroad track, you and your family and your grandchildren, and you're just going to wait because to get off the track for what? No, you really need to get out of the way of the train first. This other stuff can wait. So, but everyone had a different take on that. So I'm hoping to have more success. You know, my daughter lives in Ann Arbor in a really, really nice neighborhood around Huntington Drive, where I grew up as a kid. Expensive homes. Not a single one of them has solar. Not one. And when I see that, I mean, you know these people can afford it. So why aren't they doing this? And I think it's lack of understanding of just how important it is to act within our own sphere of influence. You know, it's just too easy to think that this has to be taken care of in Lansing, it has to be taken care of in DC. Well, you can start at home.
Yeah, and like you say, there's always some other need or some other use for money, right? So you kind of
Always.
yeah, there's always some other priority. So even if you're interested, right? We'll put it off. We'll do it next year, the year after.
Right.
Well, keep working on your brothers.
I will. I'm making progress.
Yeah, good. That's good. Yeah. Other comments or questions? No, I see two numbers here in the chat related to the capacity of the power walls. One says 14 kilowatt hours each, and one says 13.5, which is pretty much the same. So apparently that's the answer to the question of the capacity of the batteries. It's about 14 kilowatt hours.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead, Dave. You're muted. Well, as did Dave. Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I'm having internet issues, I guess. I want to thank you, Jeffrey, because you've got this human quality about what you've done, And that's important for us here, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You have a good story to tell. I like it too that, you know,
Outside influences.
I guess Steve's having some internet issues.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my internet seems to be playing up. Anyway, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate your presentation.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
Let's see, other questions, comments, thoughts? We've got about 10 minutes left. And so go ahead, John.
Well, I see in the chat that Kathy Albro raised a question about, aren't they working on legislation to allow anyone to put solar on their home without ordinances? I think what Kathy is probably referencing is the homeowners bill. Right now, homeowners can prevent homeowners associations can prevent people from putting solar on their roofs if you live within a homeowners association and they have regulations opposing people putting solar on their roof. And a bill has passed the House last November, and it recently, on Wednesday, passed out of the State Senate committee that's chaired by Jeff Irwin from Ann Arbor. And so now that bill is going to go to the floor of the State Senate. So I think it's pretty clear that bill is going to become law. So homeowners associations will no longer be able to arbitrarily, perhaps prohibit people from installing solar on their homes within a homeowners association. So that's an important change we need to make happen in Michigan.
Yeah, thanks, John. That is, I know where I live in Meridian Township, that issue has come up more than once where people wanted to put a solar system on their house, and the homeowners association said, no, you can't do that. And yeah, so it's the legislation will kind of help eliminate that barrier. Which
Yeah, so I think I know this one. I think 8.5 kilowatts.
Oh, okay.
I just saw a question pop up. What was the capacity of the array? I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, gotcha. I just saw that. Yep, 8.5. Okay. And you're kind of indicating that's providing almost 100% of your power. How would you describe that?
Yeah, close to 100% over the course of the year.
And that includes your EV too, right?
I'm sorry?
That also includes charging your Bolt, your EV.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Jen says that she'd like to learn about your planning and seeding project. I think she's referring to the prairie.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was wonderful. We had for that habitat development, we were able to, I took a bit of research actually. We were able to collaborate with the Extension Service for Michigan, and they provided the seed, which was wonderful. And as well as the seed, they provided the seed drill. And because prairie grasses are very light and some of them are fluffy, so it's really difficult to get them into the ground. And we had collaborated with the state and actually had someone come in and do the seeding for us. We prepared which involved a lot of going back and forth. Then had a 4 to 8N, very old piece of machinery, and going back and forth. Unfortunately, having to spray with glyphosate to kill this stuff, the brome grass that was there, and then burning it. So you spray and burn, and when it's pretty well knocked down, then they come in and drill the seed, and then you're off to the races. We have to burn it we're on about a 3-year burn cycle. You have to burn the tall grass prairie every 3 to 5 years to keep it healthy, and to take out some of the invasive species. We have big problems out here with invasives, shrubs and things like that. Need to get them knocked down.
There's a question in the chat from Melanie about, are there rules against ground mount solar? And I guess I would say to that, depending on your zoning, there could be setbacks that you can't have it too close to the boundary. Of course, that's not, for Geoff, that's not a non-issue because you've got so much property.
Right.
And I did run into a situation where a person installed a ground mount solar system that ended up being too high, and neighbors complained, and apparently the city or township said, yeah, it's you violated the height restriction, which I haven't heard of that happening very often. So it's wise. Of course, most of the solar installers that belong to GLREA, or pretty much all of them, like was mentioned by Geoff, are used to dealing with the both the utilities and the local government.
Yeah.
And so if they've been in business for a while, and you do want to have somebody that's, has experience in your area with the local government and the utility, they'll know what the requirements are so that you won't run into problems. If you get somebody knocking on your door and they come in and try to sell you a $60,000 system, and you don't get any comparison bids, you should be wary, because that person probably was hired as a salesperson last week and probably doesn't know anything about the utility or the local government. So consumer beware. I keep hearing about horror stories for people knocking on doors, salespeople, and then people just saying, "Oh yeah, great. Where do I sign?" I kind of like, geez. But anyway, we're got about 6 minutes left. Any? Let me mention while I get a chance that next Thursday we're going to have a member meeting, and so I'm sure the vast majority of you are members, and if you're not, you probably are thinking of becoming a member. So come join us next Thursday at 7 o'clock. And John, you're going to kind of give us a kind of an overview of what's going on in Lansing and with GLREA.
Sounds good. And we'll have plenty of time for people to ask questions about anything regarding solar or geothermal. So it will be a great opportunity to continue this wonderful discussion. So.
Well, boy, thank you, Geoff, for a great presentation. You covered a lot of ground. We got some good questions, and you helped us kind of sort through a bunch of these issues. And I guess, does anybody have any parting comment or question before we kind of adjourn for the night? Okay, I don't see any. So thanks, everybody, for coming. And again, Geoff, thanks for telling us your carbon story, your carbon reduction story, which includes solar, of course, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody, hey, thanks for coming. Hope to see you next week.